In this lecture, we are going to start learning about animal diversity and how we categorize and make sense of all of the animal diversity on the planet. So let's start with a little reminder. You remember that there are three domains. The domain Eukarya is divided into 4 kingdoms. One of those kingdoms is Animalia. That kingdom is divided into phyla, then classes, orders, family, genera, that's the plural of genus, and species. And these groups are organized by their shared evolutionary history. And so we're going to learn the most common phyla and a few classes. Yes, this might be on your test again, the 8 taxa, 8 levels of taxa. If you need to use the mnemonic, totally fine. I still do. No worries. Okay, so you remember that animals are heterotrophic, meaning that they eat other things. So hetero means different, trophic means eat. So anything that is heterotrophic eats other organisms. Animals are heterotrophic. Some protists are heterotrophic, and fungi are also heterotrophic. The opposite of heterotrophic is autotrophic, meaning that it makes its own food. The most common form of autotrophy is making food through photosynthesis. There are some rare things that do chemoautotrophy, making their own food through other chemical mechanisms. All animals have tissues, which are groups of cells specialized and working together to do a certain function. So in the humans, we have fat tissues. In humans, we have multiple kinds of tissues together to make an organ, but not all animals are going to have organs. Each group is going to have a common form of symmetry. Whether it's asymmetrical, meaning that there is no symmetry, like this is a protist, obviously, an amoeba, but it isn't symmetrical, meaning having mirror images on either side. Bilateral symmetry is by far the most common form of symmetry, and that is where if you divide something down the middle, you get left and right sides that mirror each other. There's also radial symmetry, where there is an axis in the middle and a mirror image or repeating parts are repeated around that axis. A lot of people misunderstand this definition and say you can cut something anywhere to make mirror image halves, which is not true. You can cut, if something has radial symmetry, you can cut it anywhere through the central axis and get mirror image halves. So if you look at this anemone here, it's basically a circle. If you think of an axis in the middle, anywhere that you cut it going through that axis, you're going to get 2 sides that are mirror images of each other. Okay, but if you cut it over here, like there, or where that line is, I don't know why that's there, you would not get mirror image halves. Okay, so you can cut it anywhere through the central axis and get mirror image halves. Cephalization is another thing. Every animal in any group is going to have the same kind of either have cephalization or not. And cephalization just means having a head. Sensory organs and the nervous system control is focused at the head. So obviously mammals and reptiles have cephalization, insects do, but also many worms do. All worms do. A lot of what we think of as very primitive animals do have cephalization. The things that have radial symmetry do not have cephalization. They don't have a head. So we do see cephalization in most things that have bilateral symmetry, but not things that have radial symmetry. There are 2 kinds of digestive systems, 2 basic categories of digestive systems on the planet. And the most basic is what we call a cup-like digestive system. That's what the anemone has. Here's a cross-section through an anemone, where it has a mouth that opens to a stomach, and then the anus is the same opening as the mouth. So the food goes in and then comes out the same way. The more complex, that's the cup-like digestive system. The more complex digestive system is a tube. And even a sea star, these things here, have a tube-like digestive system where the mouth, on the sea star, it's on the bottom. Their mouth is on the bottom. The food comes into a stomach, it gets digested, and then the anus is on the top of the body. Okay, you have a mouth at one end and an anus by your tail. Okay, so you have a tube digestive system. Locomotion. Members of each taxa, each group, are going to locomote in similar ways. So all of the arthropods are going to have jointed legs. Reptiles and birds have 4 limbs. Mammals have 4 limbs. I know, okay, except for the dolphins. There's exceptions to everything. And even octopus and clams can move around. Now, they have something called a foot that they will use to move around. In the octopus, it's modified into the tentacles. In the clam, it's most of the thing you eat when you eat a clam. Structural support. Do they have an internal skeleton, like all of these things? Do they have an exoskeleton, like this tube worm or this clam? Or do they have no skeleton? Octopi have no internal or external skeleton. Does it have a nervous system? Does it have a central brain? Does it have many brains? Does it have a nerve net, meaning no central control center, but a bunch of nerves that communicate with each other? So these are the things to look for as we're going through these groups. We're going to be talking about each of these characteristics. And then we're going to talk about what characteristic separates each phylum of animals from the others. And that's going to be the most important thing. I want you to think about, why is it that taxonomists put these organisms together and not with others? There must be something that distinguishes them from the other groups, and that's the distinguishing characteristic. Okay, so we've got symmetry, cephalization, skeleton, nervous system, and type of digestive system. That's what we're going to talk about for all the rest of these.